Hi everyone, I'm Ermanno Petrocchi, a PhD candidate in AA Ethics at the University of Macerata, and welcome to my third class of the course Technology and Digitalization of Civic Participation. I'm going to share the slides and then we can start the class. All right, today we're going to talk about echo chambers, epistemic bubbles, and algorithmic isolation. And this is a summary of our class. We will try to understand the problem. So this is an overview of this of the concept that we are going to deepen during the class. And two of these are epistemic bubbles and echo chambers. And then we will try to understand the role of artificial intelligence and algorithms in forming these bubbles and these chambers. And to conclude the class, we will see how the actions that we can implement in order to repair the damage. So section 1, understanding the problem, as I said, is an overview. And today we live in an age of extreme political polarization, misinformation, and overwhelming amounts of data. And social media platforms, but more broadly, digital platforms have become the primary space where individuals access, produce, and share information. However, this platform play an important role in shaping what we see, who we interact with, and which information we encounter. So the result is a fractured public sphere where different groups inhabit different informational environment. And we saw in our first class how the different types of algorithms, such as reinforcement learning, content-based filtering, and collaborative filtering, their role in shaping this environment in which just the information that users like is prioritized by algorithms. And why do we need to talk about echo chambers? Because social media is no longer just about communication, but it relates to the it concerns the epistemic environment that structures what we come to believe and to know. Indeed, personalized feeds, recommender algorithms, and behavioral data tracking have created user-tailored media ecosystems where the single users are repeatedly exposed to the same types of views, opinions, and sources. And of course, the result can only be an environment in which different communities of users live and see only different versions of reality, each of one supported by its own set of facts. So there are different narrations of reality, and single users are exposed only to the narrative that it is more aligned with their preferences and with their interests. So these dynamics have been directly linked to the spread of misinformation, of course, political extremism, conspiracy theories, and weakening of democratic norms. And the rapid integration of AI technology into these platforms has further intensified the speed and the depth of these processes, making it urgent to understand how epistemic environments are being shaped. And what's at stake? To understand this point, it's important to read this phenomena with a political lens. Indeed, our democratic society is fundamental, the ability to engage in public discourse, and this depends on the shared foundation of facts, or at least mutual trust in how facts are produced, verified, and spread. And increasingly, we are seeking a breakdown in that shared epistemic foundation, because it's not just that the people believe different things, but they trust entirely different source of truth. And this transition from a problem of truth to a problem of trust is fundamental to understand the scope of algorithmic isolation, because it shows that our crisis is not just informational, but relational. And institutions traditionally have been tasked with producing reliable knowledge, such as universities, organizations, and scientific communities broadly understood. But in our society, echo chambers and information bubbles are not just about ideas, but about how people relate to each other. So about social bonds, identity, and whom we consider a legitimate authority. And so in this sense, we can see the political consequences and the impact that these phenomena have on society. And how knowledge works in this is important to understand epistemic dependence, because most of our knowledge comes from others. So we are epistemically dependent on teachers, experts, journalists, friends, but also institutions. And this dependence is not a flaw, is something foundational of our society, and it is a necessary feature of human being in a complex world. So no one can indeed verify everything firsthand and on its own. So for these systems to work, which is the basis of our society, we need robust social structures of trust and accountability. And when these structures erode due to manipulation, disinformation, polarization, then our capacity to form reasonable beliefs diminishes and deteriorates. And for this reason, we have to understand that the crisis is not about individual ignorance, but it is a systemic breakdown in how communities coordinate around truth. And the digital infosphere is important in this crisis, because the digital age of course, has not eliminated ignorance, but it has fragmented it. Individuals are no longer uniformed, but differently informed. Sorry, no longer uninformed, but differently informed. And algorithmic platforms have a really important role in this, because they are not designed to keep user engaged with the truth, but just to keep the user engaged with the platform. And so this means showing them content that aligns with their existing beliefs, preferences, and emotions, even if these are not completely true, even they are not completely accountable or completely verified. So over time, this leads to a curated informational experience that excludes disagreement, complexity, and surprise. And so users are exposed to more content, but to less diversity. And this resulting isolation is often invisible, because people do not realize how narrow the exposure has become. And this form of isolation weakens our ability then to empathize, deliberate, or revise our views. And unfortunately, these are all core requirements for democratic coexistence. And we need also to understand the differences between bubbles and chambers, because they are causes of our informational isolations. Epistemic bubbles are informational space where certain voices or perspectives are simply not present. So there is no, let's say, intentionality, but they are the result of unintentional omission. So an example is if our social media feed only includes liberal or conservative news because of our past behavior, you might never see alternative viewpoints, but not because you don't want to. And these bubbles, for this reason, can be broken by introducing new information. And introducing new information can pop the bubble, because the user is able to receive different information to the one they are increasingly exposed to, because they are open to that. And so in this sense, bubbles are fragile. Echo chambers, by contrast, are environments where external voices are actively discredited. So they involve a systemic undermining of trust. An example is a community that teaches its members that all mainstream journalists lie, or that scientists are corrupt. And this, of course, builds walls against outside correction. And these chambers are resilient and self-reinforcing, and this makes them much harder to escape. And understanding this difference is important to identify which kind of intervention might work and which won't, to break these bubbles and chambers. And so what causes information isolation? Of course, the technological design of algorithms, because digital platforms use algorithms that prioritize content based on engagement metrics like clicks, shares, and watch time. And this incentivizes emotional, polarizing, and confirmatory content over complexity or nuance. But also there are some psychological drivers, because human beings are naturally inclined to seek and accept information that confirms what they already believe, and this is called confirmation bias. To avoid, they are inclined to avoid discomfort, cognitive dissonance, the phenomenon is called, and to defend their social identity. But there are also some social factors, because people tend to cluster with others who are similar. This is called homophily, and seek approval from peers. So this creates social echo effects where group norms become more extreme over time. And all these factors interact and compound. So isolation is not just a side effect. It's not something that comes from psychological features of people, social features, or technological features only, but it is often built into the logic of how digital platforms function and how the users are ready to receive the information present on these platforms. Now we can outline how and what epistemic bubbles are. So a simple definition is that an epistemic bubble is an informational environment where relevant voices or perspectives are missing, not because they are rejected, but because they are never encountered. And it is a form of accidental isolation. Users are unaware of what they don't see, and is often caused by personalization algorithms and behavioral choices. And the key characteristics are a lack of exposure rather than rejection. So in this sense, I referred before to intentionality. So this lack of exposure is unintentional because it's not rejection. And there are some mechanisms such as algorithmic filter, because platforms prioritize content based on past behaviors, clicks, likes, and watch time, reducing diversity over time. Homophily, according to which users tend to connect with like-minded people, networks in this sense reinforce existing views and user preferences. People naturally choose sources that align with their beliefs, reinforcing the narrowing of input. So these forces are usually not malicious, but their effects are significant. And living in a bubble, of course, affects our thinking, because inside this bubble, confirmation bias grows. We can only see evidence that supports what we like, our beliefs, and our preferences. Our confidence increases because the more we hear the same messages, the more we trust it, even if it is wrong. And then curiosity decreases because we stop questioning and exploring. So thinking, we think in this bubble that we already know enough, that we already know the important things, because these things are the ones that are always reproduced and always and the ones we are always exposed to. And examples of these bubbles are news feeds in social media platforms. We see headlines that match our views and others are left out. YouTube suggestions, one video on a topic leads to more of the same, even extreme content, and Google search. Results can change depending on our past behavior and location, and the more we engage, the more our reality becomes personalized and then narrow. And epistemic bubble, as we mentioned before, are fragile. because they are not built through active rejection of alternative ideas, but through their simple absence. In these environments, people often have never been exposed to different perspectives, not because they choose to ignore them, but because algorithms, social media, and personal preferences filter them out before they even arrive. So people don't know about other worldview. So this absence of opposing views means that epistemic bubbles tend to be fragile, and they can be disrupted or popped simply by introducing thoughtful, respectful, and credible alternative viewpoints. So when someone encounters a new perspective for the first time, especially if it comes from a trusted or empathetic source, it can prompt reflection, curiosity, and openness to rethinking assumptions. And so this encounter can make that person leaving the bubble. How to break it? This is a challenge of our society because bubbles are everywhere, and the goal is not confrontation, but exposure and understanding. So several strategies can help, such as seeking out different perspectives, because we need to make a conscious effort to engage with news outlets, authors, or thinkers that we wouldn't normally follow, and this is very difficult, but this helps reintroducing missing viewpoints. Another strategy relates to understanding algorithmic influence, because if we realize how algorithms works, so we then can understand that what we see online is filtered based on our past behavior. And in this sense, we can learn how algorithms curate content and how to take back some control, adjusting settings or clearly browsing history, or intentionally browsing and searching for something that we actually don't know or don't agree with. And so we need to encourage respectful disagreement. Instead of avoiding disagreement, we need to create space for civil, reasoned dialogue where different opinions are exchanged constructively. All of this can just only empower users to navigate information ecosystems more critically and independently. What we learn from the existence of epistemic bubbles, that their existence revealed that hidden ways in which both technology and human psychology can restrict what we know. And these bubbles are not necessarily designed to deceive, but they can unintentionally encourage overconfidence, reduce curiosity, and deepen divisions between people, and so fostering polarization. And they remind us that even when no one is trying to mislead us, we may still be missing important parts of the picture. And the good news is that epistemic bubbles can often be corrected through deliberate exposure to other viewpoints, greater awareness of how information flows, and culture of open-mindedness and critical thinking. And these things that we can learn by understanding how epistemic bubbles work can lead to important policy recommendation aimed at popping this bubble. We can now enter section 3, in which we are focusing on echo chambers, which are different from bubbles, because echo chambers are more than just isolating information environments. They are spaces where members distrusts outside voices. So there is not just an unintentional not encountering other viewpoints, but there is distrust towards these outside voices. And unlike epistemic bubbles, where alternative perspectives are simply absent, echo chambers involve a deliberate process of discrediting any information that comes from the outside. So it is a much more closed environment than a bubble. Inside an echo chamber, people are told that opposing views are not just wrong, but untrustworthy, biased, or even dangerous. And these forms a tightly controlled environment of mutual reinforcement, where everyone inside hears the same message and learns to reject all external sources. Of course, it is important to distinguish between these two types of informational isolation, epistemic bubbles. People only hear some voices, often due to algorithms, habits, or convenience. There is no intentional rejection, but just omission. Echo chambers, on the other hand, is an environment in which people explicitly taught not just to trust anyone outside the group. There is an active effort to shape who the user living the echo chambers believe and who that user shouldn't believe. So this distinction matters because it changes how we respond to this phenomena. While bubbles can be addressed through exposure to new perspective, echo chambers require rebuilding trust and undoing deep psychological conditioning. How echo chambers work then? They operate by manipulating trust. They discredit external voices, they glorify internal voices, and they discourage critical thinking. So any outside information is framed as corrupt, manipulated, or part of a conspiracy. And then news media, science, and institutions are portrayed as enemies. In an echo chamber, only members of the group are seen as credible, so loyalty is rewarded and skepticism is punished. And questioning the dominant narrative is framed as betrayal. So doubt is seen as a weakness. And this creates inevitably a system where beliefs are insulated from challenge. Echo chambers is an extremely closed system. These environments resemble ideological echo chambers or even cult-like structures. Isolation from broader society is a consequence because members are discouraged from engaging with outsiders or alternative sources. There is a strong group identity. Echo chambers offer a sense of belonging, purpose, and moral clarity. As I said, the disagreement is equal to disloyalty. Members who question the group's beliefs are shamed or excluded. And then thriving on crisis, because during times of social political stress, these systems become more appealing because they offer simple answers and clear enemies. We can now try to outline some real-life examples because there are several well-known movements that illustrate the power and the resilience of echo chambers. One of these is QAnon, the United States group that frames all external information as part of a massive global conspiracy, and members of QAnon believe only insider drops. Another real-life example is anti-vaccine groups that reject public health authorities and scientific evidence, believing only in the narratives shared within the group. And another real-life example, another conspiracy theory is the Flat Earth movement that dismisses centuries of scientific knowledge in favor of in-group claims. And these groups remain highly resistant to correction because their trust dynamics are inverted. The more you try to correct them, the more convinced they become that they are right and that you are part of the enemy. And so by being intentionally closed, disagreement is seen as something that reinforces their convictions. And why echo chambers then are so strong? Because they are extremely difficult to dismantle because they turn resistance into validation. Opposition becomes proof. Criticism from outsiders is seen as an evidence that the group is right and under attack. And for this reason, facts cannot persuade people living in these chambers. In these spaces, who says something is often more important than what is said. And so trust outweighs truth. And the echo chambers is built on self-reinforcing cycles because the group constantly reaffirms its own beliefs, and outside evidence is reinterpreted to fit the internal narrative. But why then exposure is not enough? Because as we saw in epistemic bubbles, showing new information can help. But in echo chambers, it is different, and showing new information often backfires. Exposure without trust fails. So facts alone won't persuade people who believe you are lying. So there is this dynamic in which people within the chamber don't think that they are wrong. They think that they are intentionally right. And so facts about the the fact that they are wrong is a proof that we are not that the person showing these facts is not looking at the right facts. And so change requires also empathy, and the first step is rebuilding relational trust. In this sense, this is also an important reason why exposure is not enough, because these people do not trust those who live outside the chamber. And so people are more likely to change their views when they feel heard and respected. And dialogue over confrontation is an important aspect, because real transformation comes through ongoing, respectful engagement and not debates or fact-checking alone. So we see how these echo chambers are really difficult spaces to break in. And what we learn from echo chambers are one of the most dangerous forms of isolation, of informational isolation. They don't just restrict what people know, they reshape how people decide what to trust, who to believe, and what counts as truth. And so they teach us that truth and trust are inseparable. This is an important lesson from the focus, the studying of echo chambers. And echo chambers show us that countering misinformation is not just about correcting facts, it's about rebuilding the human connection that make those facts matter. And this is another important aspect, another important lessons that we should learn from this phenomenon, because in order to rebuild our democratic society is not just necessary and enough spreading through information, but we need to work on human relationship. And now we can understand, we can try to to delve into the role of artificial intelligence and algorithms in the formation of these bubbles. From information engagement, so how AI shapes content, this is something that emerged in our first class because artificial intelligence systems no longer aims to inform. Their core goal is maximizing engagement, not accuracy or diversity. And how AI systems works, they analyze what kind of content keeps users on the platforms. So by tracking clicks, comments, time spent, and then show more of that. And these AI systems prioritize content that reinforces attention loops, often based on personal habits and emotional reactions. And the consequence of this is that rather than encountering diverse perspective, users are fed what they already like, think, or feel. And this limits exposure to different perspectives, to different point of views, and so narrow the focus of these people, of the user. And we also saw in the first class that AI is without feeling, and this entailed the rise of emotion-driven algorithms, because AI has no emotion, but it manipulates ours, because AI algorithms are able to analyze which emotions keep us engaged. And so the emotional content is equal to an higher engagement, because posts that evoke outrage, moral condemnation, or fear are shared more often and seen more widely. And because strong emotions are something that users are attracted to. And we can understand the design consequences of this, because the AI systems boosts content that makes users feel intensely. So not content that makes them think critically or understand better. And the danger of that is that of emotional manipulation. And this kind of manipulation can shape not just what we read, but what we believe and how we relate to other people. And indeed, echo chambers, more than epistemic bubbles, are a way to relate to other people. So how platforms shape us, and yeah, the persuasive design is maybe the most important thing. Digital platforms are not just neutral tools. We saw in our first, but also in the second class, that AI systems are not neutral. They are designed to influence behavior, to influence the user's behavior. And through persuasive design strategies, they guide how we think, act, and even feel. And so these strategies exploit cognitive biases that are deeply rooted in human psychology. Here are some of the most common techniques, such as once that we learn that, we can find them everywhere in our own life, in our digital life, let's say. Instant feedback, likes, notification, and reaction provide immediate rewards. And this activates a reinforcement loop, encouraging users to repeat behaviors that bring social validation. Another technique is gamification. Points, badges, and streaks make digital engagement feel like a game. And so this triggers competitiveness and optimism bias, keeping users active longer. And of course, reminders and nudges in our phones. These are something normal. There are timely notifications or in social media you haven't posted today. And these timely notifications exploit our tendency to procrastinate, gently pushing us toward desired actions. Another technique is personalization. By tailoring content to our habits and preferences, AI-based platforms make our feed more engaging, but this means also more predictable and closed. And this anchors our attention to what is familiar, because as I said before, confirmation bias is a cognitive bias to which people cannot escape. And another technique is amplifying the sense of scarcity and urgency, because limited time offers in Zalando or Amazon websites, we can see when we look for some items, only 3 items left, or this is the last item of. And these limited time offers are kind of messages that pushes our fear of missing out, and this increase attention, relying on the scarcity effect and loss aversion. Our technique is social proof. When we see a post with thousands of likes, we assume that it's valuable, and this because everyone else seems to think so. So this fuels conformity. And so we can understand how all these techniques are important and fundamental and play a role in shaping epistemic bubbles and echo chambers. Other two techniques are authority cues. Endorsements by celebrities, influencers, or experts amplify trust, as we are more likely to agree or follow with a figure of authority, and if a figure of authority signals approval. And another technique that keeps user engaged and then makes inevitably the formation of chambers and more bubble in this case is the progress tracking, because apps show us that how close we are to achieving a goal. For example, 90% complete, pushing us to finish tasks we have already invested in. So these mechanisms are subtle but powerful, and they don't ask for permission, they shape behavior by design. Yeah, we can understand this by considering the power of the like as a persuasive tool, because the simple like button may seem harmless, but it's one of the most powerful behavioral tools ever designed. It works on multiple psychological levels. The positive feedback loop, every like you receive is a mini reward. It boosts dopamine and makes you want to post again to feel that satisfaction. It's a gamified social currency. Likes function as a public score. More likes means more visibility, more validation, and more status. And so this turns self-expression into a competitive game. And also social proof and herd behavior. When people see a post with many likes, they are more likely to engage, because popularity becomes a shortcut for value, regardless of truth or absence. And then the authority bias, because likes from, as I said, influencers, public figures, or verified accounts carry more weight. Their approval subtly influences what others think and share. And in short, the like is not just a feedback, it is a tool, a very powerful tool of influence. It shapes identity, social norms, and even political behavior. And so we can understand now filter bubbles as a design problem. So filter bubbles are not epistemic bubbles, but this is what is a consequence of the design of AI-based algorithms. Is what makes people facing just content that they like and that aligns to what they like. So filter bubble is creating when an algorithms curate content based solely on your past behavior and preferences. AI system assume what people want more of what they have already engaged with. And these lead to feedback loops, and these represent a systemic bias. And by design, there is no room for contradiction, because new, diverse, or challenging content is filtered out, not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. And the result is that people are enclosed in narrow information environments without realizing it. The platform silently isolate them. So we can see how the filter bubbles, that is a design problem, then might create, or even unavoidably creates, the problem of epistemic bubble. That is a problem concerning the epistemic capacity to know and the relational capacity to to relate with other people, to connect with other people. Yeah, we already saw how outrage is important, because it is, let's say, an engagement matrix fostering polarization. Outrage wins because psychological studies showed, as psychological studies show, that we react more strongly to threats and conflict than to harmony, and then platforms exploit this. AI system learns that polarizing or sensational content keeps people engaged, so it promotes it disproportionately. And this creates a cycle of conflict, because more extreme content, it means more engagement, it means more visibility, and it means more division. And the political impact of that is simple, because this pattern fosters tribalism, identity politics, and radicalization, and of course, polarization. And this is another aspect to understand why optimization is different and is the opposite of ethics. Optimization means maximizing a target variable using a data-driven prediction. What is missing in that is that ethics, empathy, context, and intent. So platforms don't, AI-based platforms don't ask, is that content true, harmful, or fair? They just want to keep the user engaged and keep, for social media platforms, for instance, keep the user scrolling. And the implication is that without ethical considerations, systems that optimize behavior can easily become tool of manipulation, bias reinforcement, or exploitation. And this means a loss of empathy and emotional common ground, and then the formation of epistemic bubble and echo chambers. There is in our society a fragmented emotional realities. Different people experience different online worlds shaped by their data profile. This impacts inevitably on empathy. When we don't share the same facts or emotional references, then understanding others becomes extremely harder. And this fosters also digital alienation, because social media reduces complex emotion to emojis and clicks, and this discourages deep emotional engagement. And the civic cost of that is that emotional disconnect undermines solidarity, social cohesion, and collective decision making. And so we can understand how the political implication of how it is important to read the implication of design choices with political lens, civic lens, and also social relational lens. Because in this system, because of these systems, everything becomes suspicious. There is a collapse of shared trust. When people see only tailored content, they lose confidence in institutions, media, and even each other. There is a rise of suspicion. If your feed contradicts someone else's, then you may see them as misinformed, manipulated, or dangerous. And there is also a weaponization of distrust in our society, because bad actors exploit this by flooding systems with misleading content, knowing that the fragmented audience will struggle to verify truth. And the outcome is that conspiracy theories thrive, dialogue erodes, and polarization deepens. And so how can we repatch the damage? We need to rebuild epistemic trust by promoting transparency in institutions and media, fostering interpersonal trust through honest and respectful communication, and also encourage fallibilism, because accepting that we can be wrong can open space for real dialogue. So this is something that society should try to encourage. We don't just need facts, we need to believe that facts come from someone we can trust. This is maybe the most important lessons from echo chambers, the implications of echo chambers and epistemic bubbles. And of course, education must go beyond literacy. Critical thinking alone is not enough. We need dialogue, intellectual virtues such as humility, curiosity, and open-mindedness. We need also empathy, understanding understanding of the others. Understanding the perspective of the others, and we need to be resilient to manipulation. Because not all information deserves equal trust, but is missing or is a dangerous action. So a virtue-based approach might be important, as we will see in class 6. But we also need a design ethics. From optimization, we need to shift to the concept of responsibility, because as we saw, design choices are extremely important in creating this phenomena of epistemic bubbles and echo chambers. So we need to ask, we must ask, what are we optimizing for? Are we encouraging connection or division? Do we amplify outrage or facilitate reflection? These are important questions that designers should ask themselves when designing and developing AI systems. So suggested principles are slow down virality, emphasize source transparency, and give users epistemic tools and not just content. Can AI in this sense align with human values? Yes, but this needs a really conscious effort. It requires a value-sensitive design, so including values within the designs, including ethical perspective. We need to also include diverse worldviews and ongoing audits, not just one-time fixes. So in this sense, ethics by design is not optional, but it's a structural. It should become structural. And in order to achieve that, the role of institutions, media, and platforms is fundamental. There is a multi-level responsibility. Institutions should support civic education and media literacy and fund ethical tech research. Media should rebuild public trust through accountability and clarity and avoid sensationalism. And tech platforms should invest in algorithmic transparency, create spaces for deliberation and not just consumption in their products. In our everyday life, we can do as users something such as practice epistemic responsibility by diversifying our media diet, asking, why do I trust this source, challenging our own belief and not just others, and engaging dialogue, maybe also with people that think differently than what we do. So being a good citizen today means being a good knower. And the key insight, we can just skip this slide because we are running out of time. And I want to leave you with 3 final questions, as usual. The first one is, what distinguishes an echo chambers from an epistemic bubble? What responsibility do platforms have regarding online polarization? And can AI align with democratic values like empathy and pluralism? These are some selected references of this class that you consult. They are very famous. And so I hope that everything was clear, and see you in the next class. Thank you.